Welcome to another 21 Hats Dashboard, brought to you by our sponsor, The Great Game of Business. I'm Loren Feldman. I'm here with Gene Marks to talk about the things we think business owners should be following this week. Welcome, Gene.
Hey, Loren. I was just thinking about this, how life is like a game. It really is. And running a business is like a game, which is why the great game of business seems to dovetail into both life and running our businesses. Don't you think?
I think, it's funny. I'm not sure people understand what that refers to all the time when they first hear about the great game of business. And it started because they use gamification. They play games to
Did you just say gamification?
Is it gamification?
I think it's gamification. Yeah.
Well, thank you.
I think so. Yeah. I've never heard gamification.
I don't think I've used the word a lot. All right.
Obviously.
I'm going to assume you're right. Gamification. The idea that owners use it to encourage their employees to pay attention to specific metrics or issues. They turn it into a game and try to improve the performance of the business. And they've had a lot of success with it.
Yeah. That sounds about right. And listen, the last time I heard of people referring with such interest in the game was that Seinfeld episode where George was picked up in the wrong chauffeur. Remember that? And he had to impersonate this supremacist organization. And the author wrote the game. Do you remember that?
I don't. It's been too long. Wow.
Anyway, I'm getting off track, and I do not want to imply in any way that the great game of business is that. It was just a funny Seinfeld episode. So anyway.
Understood.
My last word is the game is what they wrote.
All right. Back to business.
Let's go.
You're always writing and talking about stuff that matters to business owners. Last week, there were a number of stories that suggested that the fallout from the collapse of Silicon Valley Bank has led to people moving deposits from smaller banks to bigger banks, which has led to smaller banks being more conservative about their lending, which has a lot of people speculating about a possible credit crunch.
Yeah. I'm
curious, you talk to your clients all the time. Have you seen any evidence of a credit crunch?
No, I haven't seen any evidence of a credit crunch per se. What so a couple comments on that. It is, I totally get why businesses and individuals would feel that way. It's sort of a knee-jerk reaction, but it's
feel that way, meaning the inclination to move their deposits to larger banks.
Yeah. I kind of get that. You know what I mean? Like, and I'm sure you feel the same way, right? It's it's just you feel safer with a bigger, bigger organization behind you and all that kind of stuff. Do you know what I mean?
Sort of. I also have a lot of skepticism about those bigger banks.
Yeah, exactly right. And that's exactly what I was going to say. I don't know how much more safer we've seen some of the largest banks in the country go bust, during the Great Recession. And, I don't know if the people there are that much more smarter. You know what I mean? To bear in mind is that the FDIC, they publish every quarter an official problem bank list. Like they do stress testing of like all the banks in the country. And, they just published their unofficial list. I don't know why they don't make it official, but they do. It's what they publish. For the first quarter of 2023, it just, came out, recently. We're here in the second week of April. There are 46 institutions on their list that are considered to be problem, institutions. 46, it's not a huge number, particularly when we consider we have like 4,300 banks in this country. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I just want to say, like, people shouldn't, I don't think people should be panicking and running away from their banks. I'm not seeing it among my clients either. And certainly I don't think you're going to be that much safer at a larger institution either. Silicon Valley Bank was like the 16th largest bank in the country, and they still, fucked up their cash management. So, who's to say that somebody else is going to do the same thing? You know what I mean?
Yep. And then those depositors all got bailed out in the end, too.
They did. And that's a whole other confusing scenario.
Right. Let's not go there. I want to stick with the credit crunch aspect of this a little bit more, because I think that's kind of the story of the moment. There's this discussion is spreading, and I'm wondering how you look at that. It's such a tricky thing to figure out whether banks are reining in credit or not, because clearly it's more expensive. Interest rates have gone up. People have to pay more. Is it just that, or are they actually being more conservative about who they will loan money to? And we may not know that for a while. How do you think about that?
I mean, first of all, I hate to say I told you so, but I told you so. I mean, I wrote about this at the end of December in The Guardian, and I said 2023, the biggest thing impacting small businesses are going to be interest rates. And I said in that piece, it's going to come with, two ugly heads. One is just a cost of borrowing, and then there's going to be less credit availability, period. Because it's more expensive for banks to borrow money from the Fed. So for them to do that, now that their cost of operations have gone out, they got to be a little bit more careful with the money that they're lending out to people, regardless of what interest they're charging them. So it just makes sense that they're looking more carefully and scrutinizing smaller startups, early stage, emerging growth companies, particularly in those industries that like tech, which have really been challenged. So it's common sense that the banks themselves are going to be pulling back on the availability of credit. It just is. So, you've got the one group of business owners that are paying, like, I think the prime rate is like 8% now. I mean, it's pretty high, Loren, like people are paying, and they're paying 1, 2, 3 points above that to refinance their equipment loans, property loans, working capital loans, or get, new loans for those established business owners are going to be paying more. But it's the ones that are starting up businesses or ones that are like emerging growth or looking for bank financing. No question they're going to find it more difficult. And I think if you talk to any banker, they would agree with that there's just more scrutiny. I think the Silicon Valley Bank thing is added salt to the wounds. That's what I think. It was happening anyway because of the higher interest rate environment.
Got it. And by the way, I like it when you say you told us so, because that's why you're here. Yeah, exactly right. So, I don't know. I did write about that back then, and I just want people to know that, like, damn it, I did say this. Give me some credit here. Credit where credit is due.
Yeah. Where's my wife? Let me get her in here and tell her how smart I am.
Anytime. Bring her. She's always welcome. Yeah. Next topic. You wrote recently for Forbes about the best password managers for businesses. First of all, should every business be using a password manager? Yeah.
So, all right, I got a whole speech on password managers. First of all, this whole conversation is going to be obsolete in a couple of years because passwords are going away. Loren, it's all going to be biometrics. I mean, that's where all the big, software vendors are going. Microsoft is making a big push that way to be passwordless. So you're going to use fingerprints or eye scans or facial scans. It's not good news for me because I bite my fingers really bad. So I don't know if my fingerprints will even show up. And I'm completely bald and pale, so I don't know how that does with with facial scans.
I can't get the fingerprint thing to work on my MacBook. Yeah. It always works for a while, and then it stops, and I just go back to typing in my password.
As a problem, it's got that biometric technology has got to get a little bit better and more reliable for it to become mainstream. But it's heading that way because it's going to get better and more reliable. But in the meantime, we're here in a password environment. So people need to be using, they're using passwords. There are a number of good password managers out there. Some of the leaders, LastPass, Keeper. I use Keeper, Keeper Security, LastPass. Although they're the biggest, but they've also suffered a couple of hacks in the past couple of years, which is like,
kind of against the point.
I know. That's my point. I'm like, I can't believe that they haven't just been put out of business. I mean, you're putting these passwords with them and they call it the vault. They literally call it that. And clearly not a very secure vault if they're big. And then they'll come back and say like, no, nothing was significant was compromised. And we're like, who believes that? So, but putting those concerns aside, the password managers, they really serve a really good purpose. And I use it. I don't have one for my entire company though. And I should just get a company one and tell people to use it. But what it does, Loren, is do you have one, by the way? Do you use it?
I do not.
So here's what it is. Like, instead of, having the typical passwords that people use, and we all know that people use, stupid and short and bad passwords,
Yep.
Yours being, I love the Phillies, I hate the Mets, and that's silly. So but anyway, if you use the password manager the right way, it gives you a complex password to use for each site that you go to. And then it will either prompt you to fill in that password when you're on that site, or if you turn that off, which I do, because I don't know if ever my device gets stolen. You can go back to the password manager and it'll easily copy and paste the password in. So in other words, it enables you to use those passwords, those 30 character, asterisk, stars, exclamation points, like really strong passwords instead of just, password 123. And then it's available cloud and then you can share it and do all your kind of thing. Now with Keeper security, I authenticate that. So I cannot get access to my passwords without first putting in a password, but then it asks me for authentication. I use Google Authenticator. It's like a third-party authentication app.
Yep.
Microsoft has one, Google's. There's other ones. You can even set it up with like a flash drive, like a key that you put into your device. That way, even if like Keeper gets hacked, theoretically, I mean, if they get my password to get into Keeper, they can't get into Keeper without having my my authentication. So it gives me a little bit of comfort. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And they store all the passwords in these highly encrypted ways. So again, even if those password managers get hacked, it is really tough to get access to that. But I am warning everybody, besides biometrics coming along, the supercomputers of the world that are being developed are able to process through even the most complex encryption keys, where at some point, even those encryption is not going to be, as safe as it is right now. Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
So it's all temporary, but I do recommend using one of those password managers.
What percentage of businesses do you think are in fact using password managers?
Like 1%.
Really?
I really don't think people do it. And even, what I also find with clients, they say, use a password manager, and then they you can't require employees to use it. The best way to go.
You can't require employees to use it?
No, I mean, like you can't, you make it available to the employees. That's where they're storing their passwords.
Can't you make it mandatory to the employees?
Not really, no. I mean, like they can, the password managers aren't needed to get access to applications and networks or whatever. They're just a vault to store that information, which, you can still create your own passwords if you want to do that and not use it, So it's like a tricky thing to get people to actually use it. I mean, you have to say to them, I'm paying for it and this will protect you, and you can use it not only for your business, but use it personally, have complex passwords for your bank accounts and investment accounts. Do you know what I mean? So you can entice them to use it, saying it's a great benefit and will secure your stuff, but you really can't.
If it's customer data you're talking about and somebody's using a password to get into a CRM, I would think you could make that mandatory.
Yeah. And again, I mean, that's just, as like anything else. I mean, it's not like your big brother, like snooping over the shoulder, whether you're using this stuff or not. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, you can make it mandatory and tell your employees you need to use it and I'm paying for it and this is important and whatever. But I'm just saying, it's not like a required thing. What is a required thing though with this is that if you're smart and you get rid of your stuff in your office, and you have like a managed service provider host all of your files and your applications and whatnot, then they set up the good ones have their own password management systems, so that forces the employees to use complex passwords, and then they can store it with the managed service providers. Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
So that's a better way to go about forcing your employees to do it.
I'm still struggling with that 1% figure. Were you being flipped when you said that, or do you really? It's not quite that bad.
I was being flipped. Yeah. What do you think? I have like all the time in the world to do surveys of my clients, Loren? But, what am I, Survey Monkey? Like I'm running like a data farm here. Like I can find out how many people are using it. Jesus.
I count on you to be in the ballpark. Do you think it's less than half?
Yeah, I do think it's less than half. Think it's less than half, but
that makes me feel a little better. 1% seemed low.
Yeah. It's probably not as low as 1%, but I don't know. It's not that high.
Not what it should be.
Yeah, that's for sure.
All right. Next topic. You recently wrote about the business case for addressing the mental health of your employees. That it's not just an ethical issue, but also a financial issue. What were you referring to with that?
Well, first of all, the average age of the U.S. small business owner is like 55. Half of us are over 50. Could care less about mental health. We weren't brought up to talk about it. It was always a stigma. It was all.
Some of us are coming around, though.
Did I ever tell you the story? Like I was at a client. This is like a couple of years ago, and I was like in a small conference room, and I was talking to one of the owners. She's like my age. He's in his mid 50s, and some young woman, distraught. She was like an employee, was like crying. Her car broke down, and then she didn't have enough money to pay for it, and she's under a lot of stress. I feel a lot of that. And she came to him and she was crying to him while I'm sitting there in the conference room, and he's listening to her. And then as soon as she walks away, he's like rolling his eyes at me.
Oh gosh.
Oh geez, like that kind of thing,
Was this before the pandemic?
Yeah, this was before the pandemic. And it's also just, you just can't do that anymore when you're running a business. I mean, there are a lot of younger employees that are under a lot of stress, and anxiety, and they're willing to talk about it now because it's a thing, and
which is a good thing. And that awareness has spread since the pandemic hit.
It really has. And, it's like, it kind of makes sense. It's like, we don't have a problem talking if we have like a medical issue. I mean, a heart problem, or we break our arm or something. I mean, like, a mental health issue is a brain issue. There's something wrong that needs to be worked on, fixed. Maybe it's therapy, maybe it's pharmaceuticals, maybe it's whatever, but it's no different, so we should be able to talk about this stuff. And the millennials and Gen Zers, we talk. They're a nicer generation than us, Loren. Okay, they really are. I mean, they're annoying and they don't work as hard, but they are a nicer generation.
It's a low bar, Gene.
They really are. It's true, but they've made more awareness. And then you've got like Simone Biles and Naomi Osaka, and unfortunately Ben Simmons when he was with the Sixers, and it's drawn a lot of awareness. So there's all these studies out that say that people that have mental health challenges tend to lose a lot more time working. They take way more days off than people that don't. So now it's a financial issue. And then on top of all of that, it's a recruiting issue because we're all, falling over each other trying to attract good people. Half the people in this country are younger employees. And they're asking my clients, like they're sitting there in interviews and, what kind of benefits do you provide? And I suffer from this type of, anxiety or depression. What kind of mental health benefits do you provide? And man, you better be ready to respond. I mean, it's a thing now.
Do you have any suggestions?
I do. You, first of all, talk to your health insurance company and find out what benefits they offer because they've expanded them all. Number two is you give some training to your employees because your existing employees, some who may have these challenges, don't even know about it. They should be aware that things like, fees for psychiatrists or psychologists or, things like, Xanax or, Zoloft. I mean, those things are covered under most plans now. And it's possible employees don't know about that. You might want to bring in an outside, firm. And I mentioned a few in the article that I wrote for the Inquirer, that could do like special sessions that talk about stress and managing those challenges. And there are some really good platforms out there, Loren. There's BetterUp is a really good. You pay like a couple $1,000 a year, and it's an online platform. It's been very popular. I have a few dozen clients that use it, where you make it available to your employees. The employees go to BetterUp, and they can connect to and talk to psychiatrists and psychologists confidentially and privately about their issue, have their own systems. And it's just a platform that you're providing a benefit for those employees. BetterUp's one of the primary investors is Prince Harry, believe it or not. But the good news is for you and all your listeners, Meghan Markle apparently has nothing to do with it. So I give it the seal of approval. You can use it and feel fine.
Not sure what to make of that, Gene.
She was involved. I wouldn't be talking about it. So. But it's a good platform.
I'm going to let that go. Last topic. In yet another surprisingly employee-friendly piece you wrote, Gene, there's a way for business owners to make unlimited paid time off work. Tell us what you were referring to with that.
So really, is it employee-friendly? Because now all this information, this data that's coming out is showing that, unlimited PTO plans actually favor the employer more than the employee.
Well, Gene, you stole my thunder. That's where I was going to go right after you talked about how great they are. Because you in the piece you wrote, you talked about how it's a recruiting tool for businesses.
Yes, it is. Yeah, because these employees are like listen, there's a lot of people out there that, they're attracted to companies where the less they have to work, the more attractive the company is, That's where we are in 2023. So like when they hear unlimited, they hear 4-day work week.
All
yes.
Right, I got the real Gene here now.
There we go. Then they hear unlimited paid time off. Are you kidding me? Unlimited, sign me up. But here are the facts with unlimited paid time off plans. First of all, studies have shown that employees tend to take less time off, like 14 to 16% less, something like that, and which presents a mental health challenge, by the way, but that's a whole other thing. So it actually costs employers less. I forget if I included this in the article or not, but there's a handful of court cases that found in favor of the employer when if they terminate somebody, they don't have to pay unused vacation when you offer an unlimited PTO plan.
They don't have to pay unlimited paid time off for the rest of your life.
They just bankrupt themselves. So they don't have to do that. So a lot of employers have to really cough up some money for employees that have accrued vacation. If you have an unlimited PTO plan, you don't have to do that. So there's that. And let me give you some advice, because again, I have clients and readers that have been doing this. It's been growing in popularity because you can control it, Loren. I mean, you can have more than one PTO plan at your company. I mean, you can have a plan for hourly workers, you can have a plan for management, and then you can have that unlimited PTO plan, which is like the carrot, out there. You can make it like you're only eligible if you're with us for a few years, 5 years. That might help with retaining people. And then the unlimited PTO plan, here's the catch. For my clients that have implemented it the right way, it's like, yes, we have unlimited PTO, but your supervisor has to approve any time that you take off. So if you're thinking you're going to take the next 6 months and go surfing in New Zealand, probably not going to happen.
I think most employees understand that, don't you think?
I would think so, but the supervisor, it is in writing, and that way you keep control of it yourself, and it's an internal control from stopping any individual employee from taking advantage. But just think about that if you're an employer, Loren, right? So people take less time off, putting aside the mental health issues. You don't have to pay any unused vacation. It's a huge recruiting tool. People love to hear this stuff. And you can make it to be eligible to, it'll increase retainage in your company, hopefully, if they know employees can be eligible for this plan after a few years. And you can keep control of the hours they take time off. It doesn't have to kill you, because you just say, it's up to the supervisor to approve. So I don't know. To me, it seems like a really good idea. We have it in my company. I mean, I don't, it's unwritten. It's just whenever people ask for time off.
Are people taking time off?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, people in my company take time off all the time, and I don't track it or anything. So it's an unofficial unlimited paid time off plan. It's just, if people are good. I mean, employees don't, listen, it's always the exception rather than the rule, but at least for the people that work for me, they're like, hey, Gene, I am going to have a family trip to Australia, and it's going to be 3 weeks, and it's going to be next October. And I'm like, yeah. So as long as we can plan it out and make sure that, your work is covered, go for it. Knock yourself out, I don't know. And employees who want to get ahead and do a good job, and there are, some of them still out there, they don't want to take advantage of their employers. They get it. So I don't know. I just think it's like a good thing to offer.
It used to be kind of a dirty little secret that that unlimited PTO wasn't quite the, wonderful benefit for employees that it sounds like. I think that word has gotten out, and people understand that now.
Yeah.
And so that leads to my next question, which is, do you think it's going to remain a recruiting tool, or are employees catching on that this isn't necessarily the greatest thing ever?
I actually think, and you hit right on it, I think as it becomes more and more common, it'll be one of those things that it will hurt you if you don't have it, or at least an option for it. And therefore, it will be a recruiting tool, because if you don't have it, then you're gonna, and your competitor does, you're gonna miss out on finding those employees.
All right. The last time you were here, you told us how outraged you were that Illinois is mandating 5 days of PTO for some employees. This week, you're advocating unlimited PTO. Can you square that circle for me?
Oh, no doubt about it, because it's my decision. Okay. I want to offer unlimited PTO. That's up to me. I'm not having the state tell me what to do. Jeez.
Okay. What are you working on for this coming week, Gene?
So I am going to be writing about point of sale systems. I've interviewed a few Philadelphia area retailers and restaurateurs, and what's changed and how they're using them, and all that, all that good stuff. So that's my main thing that I'll be writing this week. And then I have a CRM piece or a tech piece out in Forbes that you'll see also, that talks about why business owners aren't really paying much attention to that chat GPT thing that we talked about before.
Oh, interesting.
And I find that I've been asking a lot of my clients, and then when I've been speaking, I've been out speaking to groups and asking people to raise their hand if they even. I spoke to this group last week in Vegas. There was like 1,100 people. It was the National Portable Storage Association. I know it doesn't sound very sexy, but I asked them, show of hands, how many people played with Chat GPT, and I don't know, a smattering of hands went up. And I explained why in that article. So that's what I'm working on.
Interesting. We will look forward to those. Gene Marks is a CPA who writes weekly on small business for The Guardian, The Hill, The Philadelphia Inquirer, The Washington Times, The Chicago Daily Herald, Forbes, and Entrepreneur. You can also hear him on ABC Radio's Eye on the World with John Batchelor. Gene hosts 2 small business podcasts with Paychex Corporation and The Hartford. This episode was brought to you by The Great Game of Business, which helps businesses use an open book management system to help build healthier companies. You can learn more at greatgame.com. Thank you, Gene.
Thank you, Loren. We'll see you next week.
Have a great week, everyone.